Um, welcome Black to shout out to the man. Belief, welcome Black to the Coffee Black podcast. This is season 3, episode 2. We got a lot of great content for you all this season. We're fresh back from the motherland a couple weeks in and just really inspired to share more stories from the diaspora and coffee, more history that's been hidden or unexplored or covered up. And today we have a really fire guest. Met this brother in person for the first time at the Specialty Coffee Association conference in Boston earlier this year. He was there for the first premiere of the documentary, and we're going to be bringing some coffee in from him real soon. But without further ado, I wanted to introduce the brother Jim to you all so he can share some of his vision. Jim, just give us a quick introduction to kind of who you are, what you do in coffee, and then I ask you about what's been brewing on with your coffee setup these days.
Absolutely. I'm Jim Ngokwey, managing partner at Mighty Peace Coffee. We're a coffee importer working in Congo, my country of origin. That's where I'm from. I'm a Congolese immigrant, been in America a little more than half my life, but Congo is still my home. And yeah, we launched Mighty Peace Coffee in 2018, so we actually turned 4 this month. So we're relatively newcomers to the game, to the coffee industry, but yeah, we're excited about the role we play in it and the future.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to make some coffee. We're launching a collaboration coffees. At the woman Pindo lot, I believe.
Yep.
Bridge coffee is good in Congolese coffee. Recent chat with Bozeman's past to celebrate his life by doing a blend of 2 different Central African coffees. We'll say, what kind of Central Africa real thing. So anyway, we're doing a blend. One of them is yours. So I figured I would buy that had a similar profile. Tell me, bro, what you been getting into as we had. I saw you at SCA. What you been sipping on lately? Like, what's your home coffee set into your world?
So you're breaking up a tad bit, but I think I heard what you've been sipping on lately. And not shameless promotion, but I do often try to try the coffees that our roasted partners roast. So right now I'm drinking, Mighty Peace and Love from Ross Street Roasting in Iowa. But I'll always try to kind of try the different ways our coffee's roasted across America. So that's what I've been drinking, this past week. Just got the bag last weekend, and I try to alternate, between our coffees from Congo, other coffees from across Africa and the world. But this week it's been the Mighty Peace and Love from Ross Street Roasting, and they roasted our Haraka coffee.
That was beautiful, bro. Like I think I feel you. Like I do roasting house. It's sound.
It's a little choppy, so it goes in and out. I heard you better earlier.
Yeah. Well, we're back again. Information is it? Mic check 1 2.
I heard that. There's a slight delay, but I heard that.
Okay, cool, bro. Well, we're you, so just bear with to hear Jim talk anyway. So, man, I would love. We want to, man. I appreciate your time to hear some on just like you sent me this really when we began to and it was about talk about it and then share just some. I think there's a connection and to me about this journey of like sharing this history is that oftentimes like we didn't learn these. I didn't learn in undergrad or grad school between different coffee communities in the African American community. Really powerful stuff African American stuff. So we cool for just a little bit.
Cool. So can I give you that background?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So a lot of ties between Congo and African Americans, and I think after I go through some examples, I hope it helps kind of dispel the myths that Africans don't like African Americans and vice versa. So I think that
Myth
myth
gone.
is there for a reason. Yeah, it's definitely there for a reason to divide us, but the history and the present show it's not the reality. So just kind of going back, from the beginning, unfortunate beginning, the transatlantic slave trade, and I say beginning, but likely there were other black people in America before then. But in terms of what the official history is, you know, this from the transatlantic slave trade, it's estimated that a lot of slaves were taken from what was then called the Kingdom of Congo, and that was Congo spelled with a K, and that kingdom includes part of what's today the DRC, the country I'm from, Congo. Also, our neighbor Congo. I know it says two different countries with a similar name, as well as Angola and Gabon. So there were some, Africans that were kidnapped from that region, and that includes DRC today. And and because of that, it's estimated that maybe 20 to 25% of Black people in the Caribbean and Latin America and the North America probably can trace their ancestry to Congo. So there's a lot of, we have a lot of, this distant relatives, because of what happened then. And then from then, Congo actually was for a time period, a little less than half a century, was the personal property of King Leopold. So that was Belgium's king at that time, not even a colony yet. It was just his personal property, and he was able to basically negotiate that at the Berlin Conference and got his own personal property, which was it was called Congo Free State. Then it's a very ironic name that a land that's basically 10 times bigger than Belgium became his own personal property. But that's a story for another day. But that was personal property. But because there were so many stories and proof that he was basically committing extreme atrocities in Congo. We've all heard the stories of basically people getting their arms cut off because they didn't meet a rubber quota and things of that sort. So there was widespread, even back then when those things were relatively common. Like he kind of took it to another level. So there was widespread criticism of King Leopold, and actually two African American men who saw that for themselves. They actually went back to America. One of them, his name was George Washington Williams, and the other one was William Shepherd. So William Shepherd was actually a Presbyterian missionary, and George Washington Williams was also an influential African American around that time. And they went back to America and basically lobbied the American Senate to take action against King Leopold. So think about that. In the 1800s, we got African Americans who go to Congo Free State then, and say, "Hey, what's happening in Congo is not okay. America should do something." And that pressure they put on the American government actually helped basically force King Leopold to relinquish Congo Free State, and instead of being his personal property, it actually became a colony of Belgium. So still not free, but it was not his personal property anymore. And that big change happened because of African Americans advocating on behalf of Congolese. I think that's the first example. That's the first recorded example of basically our communities coming together. African Americans, having the back of their brothers back in Congo. So I think and I didn't learn that until way after I graduated college. So I think again, there are reasons why people don't really hear about these diaspora collaborations. But I think it's important for us to know that, to know the real history, so that we can dispel all the myths that Africans like African Americans and vice versa. It's really not true. And then beyond that, civil rights. When civil rights was taking place in the 1960s, also the same in America. Also around the same time, a lot of African countries became independent. Like 1960, probably like 80% of African countries got their independence from whichever European colonizer in that year. Again, that was the same year as the U.S. civil rights. But again, around that time, a lot of African leaders, whether it was Kwame Nkrumah or Patrice Lumumba, were coming to America to connect with African Americans to get help in basically building these newly independent countries. So again, the collaboration from America to Africa and Congo in particular goes back centuries and decades, where we've always connected, shared information, and African Americans have really helped Congolese, and Congolese have gone to African Americans to seek help. Yeah. And
Nah, that's
fun fact sidebar. Yeah, fun fact sidebar. Dave Chappelle's mother, she actually was one of the folks that worked with Patrice Lumumba. And so when you hear about Dave Chappelle's history, like his mother, she literally was working under Patrice Lumumba's cabinet, and Patrice Lumumba was we know about the connection between him and Malcolm X. If you look at their pictures, they clearly were influenced, a lot of influence there. So they're just kind of showing the connection between African Americans and Africans, and Congo in particular. And a lot of African American musicians came to Congo and Ghana, around that time, the 1960s. Like Louis Armstrong came there, performed. So I mean, like the connections, the history is so rich. So, and I think it's important for the world to know that, yeah, that this idea of separating us is not good. We have a lot more in common and a lot of more shared history than is widely known.
Wow. In the chat, yo. Shout out to the chat. Amazing, bro. And here's the crazy, when I was getting into going to a PWI outside of Chicago, and like heavily branded as like white or European experience, you know, dudes with food and like, you know, camping and or whether we're talking like there was a shop in town called Latos, like it's very Italian, you know. More the interesting things, the more that I explore in Africa about coffee, the more I learn about coffee, history and Black connectivity in Black, that's been such a surprise for coffee, which was used to it like with some form of white culture. A thing for me and my family, most connection to African culture. You know what I mean? Like I learn more about researching coffees than I do during. You know what I mean? Like
I hear that.
There's just, and so I think that to the world through community, but also to other folks who want to learn these histories that are hidden, like connection. It's so unexpected. You know, we prayed before the show. I have a strong belief in God and His goal all along. Would be a system between African communities. Imagination a lot. We'll talk about this here. Had there been no colonial, the coffee trade not been into this thing for colonialism and slavery shared across the continent because it grew. And obviously we see the first group integrating Arabica in East. Speak about this later too. Like there's all over the continent, and it's the only indigenously believe through trade and relationships shouldn't have seen a coffee from a place of peace across the continent. You know, Dutch slave trade and then them sharing it with the French, Brazil, all these things. But had that been, would have spread from a place of peace. These people in Ethiopia culture, like even on my cup it says Hindabina, like that is may your house lack no coffee. That's what it's sharing of peace. And so I can't have been shared with other Africans in slave trade and X, Y, and Z. So that connection just makes me think like, wow, things have been disrupted. Do that peace between communities, and I think that now at a place can be a symbol and a fleet God intended it to be. I'm just grateful for you being here to hear more from you about like we talk about Coffee's Black History. So can you walk us through in Congo, pre-colonialism, and now to reading an article on Congolese coffee and I wonder if local countries are like seeking to push into more awareness around to help the quality and whatever it may be. But coffee's history in Congo, colonialism and post-colonial.
Absolutely. So I'll dive into the history, and also Linda, just for the audience that doesn't know, Linda, our chief quality officer, is based in Bukavu. I actually have her on the line right now on WhatsApp. She was having some video connectivity issues, so we're doing WhatsApp. But Linda's on, so I think because she's actually in Congo right now, she can definitely speak about the present experience with coffee culture. And then after she's done that, I'll go back into the past and basically Arabica, how it got to Congo, as well as Robusta, which actually grows naturally in Congo. But Linda, did you want to give us a little bit about your thoughts on the present and future of coffee in Congo? Donc, tes idées sur ce qui se passe au Congo en termes de la culture du café et le futur.
Ah, d'accord. Il n'y a pas de problème. C'est que actuellement en RDC, je veux parler de... Genre, quand je dis actuellement, je dis il y a 1 année ou 2 ans, c'est vrai que les gens où nous exportions du café à l'extérieur du pays et tout, mais nous-mêmes, nous avions du mal à... je veux dire, à consommer ce même café en fait.
So we export coffee, but we don't really consume the coffee. Ouais, Linda, je suis là, je t'entends, je traduis en même temps. Tu peux continuer, ouais. Yeah. So we export the coffee, but we don't really consume the coffee we export. It's not quite part of the culture yet.
Bon, je veux dire, n'est pas dans nos habitudes, mais
it's not part of our habits.
La vulgarisation et tout, on s'est dit pourquoi n'est pas consommer notre propre produit.
Both globalization, a lot more young entrepreneurs are saying, why are we just exporting? Why we try to consume it for ourselves and give it value here instead of waiting for the value to be validated by international buyers?
Moi, par exemple, je vais donner mon exemple. Il n'y a pas 2 ans, je veux dire, il y a 2 ans déjà, je créais une marque de café. Étant donné que je suis dans le secteur de café et je travaille avec Mighty Peace Coffee.
And 2 years ago, in addition to work at Mighty Peace Coffee, which really is focused on exporting and importing coffee in America, she also wanted to create a local brand so people can become familiar with it.
Bon café et que je disponibilise
because a lot of times the feedback locally is the greatest coffee, the best coffees for the international market, and the lower quality coffees for consumption locally. She's trying to change that paradigm so we don't feel like if you're going to try with coffee, it has to be the low quality. She really wants people to have pride in drinking high quality Congolese coffee. So she's basically doing that at the same time she's helping build Mighty Peace Coffee, the mission of introducing Congolese coffee internationally.
C'est quand même étrange de vendre aux autres nos meilleurs produits pendant que nous-mêmes nous ne consommons pas.
Yeah,
donc,
she definitely wants to.
Nous sommes beaucoup plus.
She wants to reverse the trend of thinking that whatever the Congolese soil produces, the Congolese people get the worst quality and the best is exported. She wants to change that paradigm, and through Mighty Peace Coffee, she's doing both. So we export really good coffee, but she also ensures that it's also consumed locally. Yeah, so Linda has a role.
That's amazing. You talked about as we've traveled throughout to see that this is this issue of ocean, and due to the branding around. When we were in Rwanda, people were telling me you would be hurt if you were found taking coffee. Was introduced to the community trauma, and in America we have this syndrome where you or to our ancestors genetically passed down some of the preferences, all those things. Like we still have to unlearn. And one of the things I've seen in Rwanda, they were saying you can taste it. So folks did. So I think with cotton, like a lot of Africans just see the cotton plant. If people see a cotton plant like this, it's just a plant, right? Itself is not racist. Just because in their home doesn't mean that associations that we've been traumatized, all those feelings. And so see that plant from any other perspective, just because they history. Well, I think that may be true. So, like I said, for instance, in Rwanda, is this a bullet? Like the people use this for, or they just tell us to grow it at home. So now, however many years, asking that to those people to go and like the product of that plant is, you know what I mean? Like there's trauma. I don't know what it's for. ad. So there's a lot. You got to present a new story around war, which is why we made the documentary coffee back to Black people with our culture and congruent with the beginning of it is cultural discovery, and I think it can. I'm curious to know in Congo, like branding basically is this rebranded so that the as see but what I is that a lot of times when as African people specifically in pace what we see happening Norwegian coffee culture Italian coffee, it's the branding strategies and the reason why our coffee avoids all those things is because I took inspiration. My wife is our graphic designer, and I like or that's the most Black culture for me is hip hop. So brand look like, and I try lots of ways people are doing this. So about those brands they're using to present coffee as something that is compatible for the thing people are thinking about is about like how do we make this something that we as ourselves in. I'd love to hear.
Absolutely, and I think from a lot of the branding is really around having pride in what comes from Congo. A lot of times, a lot of the coffee that's consumed right now at scale in Congo is instant coffee from Nestle. Like and a lot of times it's not manufactured locally. The coffee is not Congolese, so the average coffee that you can buy in Congo that's readily accessible is that instant coffee that the European company Nestle imports back into Congo. Sorry, so that's really the most widespread coffee consumption. But what's changing right now that the more entrepreneurs locally trying to change that, and what they're trying to focus on is really pride in the Congolese product. So, for example, so basically, whether you're from the Kivu, we have a brand called Cafe Kivu in the territory of Beni, where it's really about pride in consuming what's from there. So instead of selling it to Switzerland or America, like this coffee comes from this farm 2 hours away. Like let's drink it. This is our coffee. This is from our land. This is from our people. So a lot of times around that pride in consuming what's grown locally. So basically, consume local. That's really like the major tagline I try to use. Like consommons congolais, which just means let's consume Congolese. Let's make sure we don't just buy foreign clothes and like drink foreign juices and buy foreign coffee. We have all that here anyway. So let's make our own clothes and buy them. Let's support local artisans. Let's drink the coffee that comes from our land and think like that. So it's definitely that patriotism and the coffee consumption is a big part of the brand, and I'm seeing that both on the side of people that are opening up cafes and roasteries. It's really pride in Congolese products, and their focus is the Congolese market, and then expand into internationally. But it's really around getting more Congolese to basically be proud of consuming something that comes from their soil.
Man, I think that's so kind of jumping ahead here, but I don't. Having pride is the first step to being able to, like, if you and I just have a unique product to bring. If everybody in Africa, for Latino producing community, everybody of us are just if all of us copying, then when we come to market, but if each of us take the histories and create a unique connection between, hip and obviously the rapper plus Ethiopia, that's a unique. There's not another one of them. You're talking about consuming locally, or that's a unique to the market. It's not going to exist or in Ethiopia or in that's Kivu. This is one Kivu Congo. So they're focusing on a unique story to our own that it gives us more power to be creating a multi cafe and I program. Plus, we roast our own. It's based in Ghana, right? We're roasting our own thing. But I don't want to bring in another roaster who's because there's no reason for me. But if I say, well, this week ago, and it's roasted in story, that's a selling point for me. Copy and paste that for coffee for me from Tanzania, X, Y, and Z from, and so I think it's pride, but also important. Trade begins to happen, but not just between the world and the West. A part are unique and can stand on their own, so then they can be shared. To a big thing, people like we're leaving conversation, but if you look, what is the first people imagine the future before the lawmakers come in, and so I think they're going to create. Like, are there any Congo? They could be visual, it could be whatever, but who are really doing a great job? Congolese story, not open-ended, but I'm just.
So I mean, Congo definitely culture. A lot of people say culture is Congo's soft power, because while the country may not be necessarily wealthy, but the Congolese culture is very well known throughout Africa, even globally. So whether it's the music, Congolese music is very well known. I think last year Beyonce used a popular Congolese song by an artist called Franco in one of her for like sampled it on her album. And Congolese Twitter went crazy.
Wow.
But basically, Congo, even amongst Africans, like Congo is known for, I think, where Nigeria is now in terms of basically being the hotspot of modern African music. A couple decades ago, it was Congo. So when it came to music, it was what's happening in Congo. So Congo is definitely known for its music and its fashion too. So definitely, I don't know if you're familiar with les sapeurs, a lot of them, they originated in Congo. So I think when it comes to culture, like the biggest influencers that are well known in Congo and outside are usually in music or fashion. Yeah, because that part of Congolese culture resonates, with the entire country and entire continent, really.
Do you see a world coffee brands begin to folks who are leading this culture?
So you mean coffee brands locally in Congo?
Yeah. So it could be a narrative of a marketing campaign. I always have. I'm curious. I think each country has very unique art. Like to think about ways the art can begin to. So for so long, the art community has been so removed because colonial and walked off with it. I think means in some part, because when you look at coffee, for instance, it's so integrated with music, or people like Gutu Vera, where the cup designs happen, the designs, and I think like every has a culture that I think could be reintegrated with their brand and their own unique internationally. Where those art brands and this fashion movement, where cafes are designed or design the drinkware or the marketing materials for that in Congo, if you were to use your.
So can you repeat that last part? It was cutting off a little bit.
I was just saying, do you are integrating and collaborating art and if so, what do you think that makes?
And actually, that's a really good question. There's actually a lot of such collabos in Congo, such collabs in Congo, but it's particularly with beer brands. So Congo also has a lot of local beer manufacturing and a lot of popular Congolese beers. So when you think about like the biggest collab with like artists, like whether it's musicians or a graphic artist, performing artist, it's usually with beer brands. That's because that's where a lot of money has been invested. Is a lot of plants, basically manufacturing like beer in Congo. So a lot of this cool collab, a lot of money behind them to support the artists and the beverage producers. Like they focus on the beer industry, and I think my the way I see it, I'm sure it will evolve eventually. Where we'll do that for other beverages like coffee. It's just a matter of it's because it's not necessarily part of the culture like beer is. That's why they haven't seen like the potential for impact of those collabs. But I really believe that's definitely the future. I know you talked about yesterday. Not yesterday, but in the podcast I watched yesterday, you were talking about what if Bad Bunny did a coffee collab. And my first thought was, what if Fali Ipupa was probably like Congo's Bad Bunny, the equivalent? Like, what if he did a coffee collab? Like, it will go crazy. Like, people will, because he's probably the most popular Congolese artist right now, and basically him supporting and associating himself with coffee would definitely do wonders for that coffee brand, and it will resonate in a way that unless you have that cultural cachet, it won't work. So I think you're totally right. It's a great opportunity, but I think people don't see the money yet. So they don't really see the money in coffee yet. So the entrepreneurs right now that are building the roasteries, the cafes, they're mavericks really. Like they're industry pioneers. So when we look back in 20, 30 years, the same way today we may look at like some people like George Howell, or like the founders of Specialty Coffee in America, if that's the main person, or Howard Schultz or whoever else, the people that are doing that in Congo now in 20, 30 years, people talk about pioneers of Congolese coffee, it'll be those people. So right now they're still very early. Again, it's not part of our culture yet to drink coffee, but I think with the work they're doing and their innovative ideas, we'll get there. It just will take some time though, because it's not really like coffee is not part of the daily culture of the average Congolese, but beer is.
That makes sense. And even in the Black American community, we activities that people do is one, and I think part of the is to create the art that's innovative idea possible, and it kind of seeing the future, creative concepts for people to kind of be inspired by the way. But I think conversations like idea and the narrative forward. So what I would love to talk about where coffee is now. What is the history of coffee pre-colonial, wild coffee, X, Y, and Z, in the perspective on coffee? Pre-colonialism was of coffee, or was it mostly unknown? Do excuse me, learn from it.
Absolutely. So Robusta grows naturally in Congo. And I was reading a book recently that actually said that, maybe I forgot when it was, maybe 1800s, early 1900s, Robusta used to be called Coffee Congo, because, people that, the Europeans that went to Congo, they're like, this coffee is there naturally. Nobody's are actively harvesting or planting it. So it's natural to Congo. And, I've later we've learned it's also natural to most of Central and West Africa, where it's grown there naturally, the same way Arabica does in Ethiopia, right? So Robusta has always been in Congo. There were no recorded cases of people actually preparing it as coffee, but it's definitely been in Congo, for as long as anybody knows. So Robusta is natural to Congo, and the Arabica came to colonialism. So Congo was a Belgian colony, and it was brought by Belgian colonials and missionaries. So they brought Arabica, and most of the Arabica in Congo grows on the eastern provinces. So right now, whether it's North Kivu, South Kivu, or Ituri, those provinces, have the ideal climate and conditions really for Arabica coffee, because they're very mountainous. So there's high elevation, as well as there are a few volcanoes in the area, so the volcanic soil is there. So that's why Arabica, really thrives in those provinces in Congo, and that's the coffee right now. We work with Mighty Peace Coffee, because that's we know in terms of what buyers want. We know it's Arabica, but eventually we're going to work with Robusta as well. But Arabica came to Congo through colonialism, and basically Belgian missionaries and colonials bringing it there, and mostly for export. It was really it was a cash crop really to support coffee consumption in Belgium and their neighboring like the Netherlands and things like that. So it was really, that was the focus, produce coffee in your colony in Congo, and then export it back to to Belgium, the Netherlands, and other European countries. So that's really how Arabica came to Congo. And it actually was, from the research I've done, in up until maybe the 70s, like Congo was one of the world's top Arabica producers because again, the climate is ideal, the quality is great, the volcanic soil and all that, and the high elevation. And but then around the same time, around the 70s and 80s, they found a lot of minerals in Congo. We talked about the uranium earlier, but also there's a lot of cobalt, coltan, gold, diamond. So basically, Congo is often called a geological scandal. Basically, for geologists' perspective, it makes no sense for one country to have all that. Like it's estimated that Congo has literally $1 trillion under its soil. So when I say Congo's a real weapon, that's what I mean. Like it's everything you can think of. Like every material you need for the modern industrial revolution is in Congo. If you need it for your smartphone, for your electric car, back in the 1800s for the rubber, for the automotive revolution, it all came from Congo. So basically, the term has been used to describe Congo's geological scandal. Anyway, I bring this up because when they found a lot more minerals in Congo, they basically neglected agriculture. Like it's much easier to make money by digging and selling those minerals. So that's why the government really drastically reduced their funding in agricultural programs. So the coffee industry suffered as a result of that. So there was a significant dip in coffee production in Congo. From the 70s on until basically the mid 2010s, and part of that is because it was much easier to make money doing other things, and the government really did not have initiatives to support farmers and the coffee industry. So it suffered a lot. But again, coffee was still there, right? So a lot of that coffee ended up getting smuggled. So there's a lot of smuggling to our neighboring countries, and the region where our coffee grows, the one Mighty Peace Coffee imports into America. I mentioned the provinces called Ituri, North Kivu, and South Kivu. They literally border Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. So a lot of because the Congolese government were not supporting coffee farmers, a lot of them were actually smuggling their coffee to those countries in question. And so that's been a big problem, and we're hoping to be able to rectify that by basically changing the incentives so farmers don't feel like they have to risk their lives and smuggle their coffee to earn a living through coffee. So that's kind of the situation there in terms of coffee's history in Congo. Arabica in particular was through colonialism, and the future, as Linda mentioned earlier, is really around local entrepreneurs basically owning the narrative and basically sharing that patriotism and pride in consuming locally. And I saw a question there around what are some of the incentives. So the incentives why smuggling is because um, a lot of those neighboring countries, they have better coffee brands. Like most people don't know that Congo has coffee, but they know Uganda and Rwanda have coffee. So an incentive is basically you probably can earn more quick cash if you just smuggle to those countries and if you actually go through the legal processes to sell your coffee as Congolese coffee. So that's an incentive there. That's been a historical incentive for Congolese producers to smuggle. And some of the people we work with, they've been directly impacted. Actually, one of our coffees, one of the cooperative producers, and sorry, one of the cooperative managers, um, his father actually passed away trying to smuggle coffee to Rwanda. Like the boat capsized, and then that's how his father lost his life. And that actually was a catalyst for him to found that cooperative because he was like, you know what, I want to basically show the local value of Congolese coffee that we can sell our coffee as Congolese coffee without having to risk our lives to sell it to our neighboring countries. So that's actually an incentive, reason why you form that cooperative, and why it's so important for us to support them by working together and importing that coffee here. And it's our coffee called Twende. It's produced by the cooperative in question that was formed as a way to combat smuggling. Because again, it's very dangerous, it's very risky, and while there could be some rewards, also the risk a lot of times, whether it's death by drowning or literally you're dealing with illegal trade. So there could be people on the other side that are there just to rob you. So it's very dangerous activity, and it's just something that a lot of corps are trying to fight against. And through part of the way to do that is basically pay more because I think it's a luxury to think long term. Saying think about 5 years from now. If you keep doing this 5 years, things will be better. It's a luxury a lot of times to think 5 years down the line because if you're extremely poor, you don't necessarily have 5 years, right? You have to make money, like this week or this month to feed your family and feed yourself. So a lot of times, they're incentivized to get the quick cash. So it's important. So what we do is definitely pay significantly above, fair trade and above what they will be paid from a smuggler. So that's a way in which we combat it. But we know long term it will be about seeing that shared value and building a Congolese coffee industry. But we know that's a luxury to think 5 years down the line. So we know in the short term we have to address the more pressing needs, which is there's extreme poverty. There's extreme poverty, and we believe that coffee, if we're able to build a sustainable industry, coffee can actually reverse that poverty, and we can build local coffee economy and have a local coffee middle class. Really, that's really my dream. I know we talked about dreams earlier. My dream is for coffee to really help build the economy so that sure, it's great to make to build our country with our minerals as well and sell that. It's worth a lot, but we can also build our country through farming. And a lot of other countries, their wealth comes from their soil as well. We want to make sure we do that for Congo too, that we consume locally, we take pride in what we export, and that there are no incentives to smuggle our products because they have their value, they have their own inherent value as being Congolese. Yeah.
Man, I relate with that. And how's my sound right now? Just by the way, so I can.
It's a
Does it
little
sound
better than
okay?
it was before. It's a little less choppy than before.
But it is still choppy. You said.
A little bit. So there's a delay, and then I'll hear it goes silent, and then I'll hear what you said. So I think it's a delay and choppy, but it's much better now than before, though.
No, don't let me slide on the audio. I'm trying to ran a podcast, so I'm trying to get my setup works. How is this mic, by the way? Mic check 1 2.
10 times better.
Oh wow, MacBook mic. I had the did not work. We had the camera mic that the computer is happy with this. But I think I seen what you were saying about immediate and trying to get people to transition to long-term investment mentality. Poverty makes, that's one of the critiques heavily you see about the African, the whole poverty queen mindset, or people on food stamps for quick money, which obviously is in years. And every day we talk to our students about the danger to get quick money and cash, the dangers of trying to pull and to be self-sufficient. A lot of these things that people in our community historically, but the reality is like the poverty in the hoods is so extreme that it almost makes term, because even if you invest long term, there's so many dangers next week or next month, let alone next year. And we even see that with food, right? The food deserts where people are choosing unhealthy things, because I see such a parallel between that and what you're describing Congo, and them feeling like they have to turn to the activity, in order to take care of it. And I even see that with Afro-Colombian farmer we work with named Jalton, partner with. He was just transitioning, actually, a trade that Colombia is famous for. I'm not going to talk about bad press, but he was trying to transition. He's like, I don't want to do this. It feels wrong. And his coffee for one season very popular, and then the next year, because of he's not able to harvest his crop and it goes bad, it doesn't cup well. These realities to almost impossible to make the kind of plays that will really restore equity and wealth to our. I think it's not until we begin to collaborate with strategies or marketing campaigns, collaboration in businesses, that will have some type of change and change the mindset to begin to think differently about how we assets and our resources. And hearing from me, because I didn't realize that black folks in the coffee community as well.
Yeah,
it's powerful, bro. And I wanted to touch on before we go today, a lot, Black Panther 2's coming out, and excited. I'm seeing African American, and just the whole diaspora on TikTok is very, people talking about what they're gonna wear. We got the plan. But what's your thoughts on of coffee as being seen almost like him? That's a part of the documentary you saw, floated by our community as well as some other. I think the reality, the future of coffee, if we use Wakanda as a creative mind by branding, and what does it look like? something that's like really transformational in the future?
Yeah, my dream really, and for the future of coffee in Congo and Africa and really globally, is for the relationships to be less one sided. Because right now, historically, when it comes to what basically cash crops is, you know, Europeans, Americans, need this for their day to day life. So let's basically get the cheapest possible labor, the conditions that are the most the least expensive, like whatever we can get away with to make sure that the end user in Europe or America gets their product for cheap, whether it's coffee or with this avocado. I've heard crazy stories about avocado farmers in Mexico basically dealing with the same conditions, right? So it's definitely worldwide. So it's beyond coffee, but obviously we know coffee has also a very painful history. So my dream really is for the relationship to be less one-sided. So even if coffee consumption has not become as widespread as quickly in our community, that even the coffee we sell, that is we actually have uh, a collective equity and agency in the price. Because right now, again, Mighty Peace Coffee, we're a small company, so we can basically, I don't want to say get away, but basically our commitment to paying farmers a certain way and making sure they actually decide what the coffee is worth, that it's not what the stock market says. We can do this because we're still small, we're still selling a certain type of coffee, but at scale we need more people to do that, and that can only happen if more people have the agency over the pricing. As long as the price for coffee is decided in New York or London, it's going to be hard to change, right? So I think a lot of that will start with basically the people that are tied to the actual region where the coffees come from, the Africans, Latin Americans, the Asians, that they actually have agency around the pricing. And I think that starts with better leadership across the board. The governments have to issue policies. I know we briefly talked about Uganda's decision. Again, I have to research more about that, but my point is more so that it can't be seen as a crazy action when an African organization says, what, you're not going to dictate how much our coffee is worth anymore. I think there was a big scandal last year when Ivory Coast and Ghana said, what, Nestle, you have to pay this, at least this for our chocolate. Our farmers are suffering. You have to pay this, and it was a big scandal. The IMF got involved, and it's like almost like, how dare you tell us what to pay for your coffee? But this has to change eventually, right? Eventually, whether it's Congo, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Ethiopia, they have to be able to dictate what the coffee is worth because it's their coffee. It's our coffee, right? So we can't be price takers forever, because as long as we are, we will basically be at the mercy of the basically the price givers, right? So eventually we'll basically have to have the economic resources to dictate the price, because it comes down to money. If you have no money, unfortunately, you're at the mercy of those who do. So eventually we have to collectively have money so we can dictate prices. That's the case for coffee and everything. As long as we don't have the actual financial power, we'll be at the mercy at those who do. Because even if the government says Congolese coffee today is worth $10 a pound, if the buyers in New York that actually drink it say, I'm not paying more than $5 a pound, that's when you see smuggling and other things like that, right? Because what the government says does not match what it can enforce because it doesn't have the money. So I think it comes down to money, and we gotta have some money, man. And that happens when we work together, circulate the money in our communities, and share resources and information. I think the more we do that, the more we'll have that economic power. And I'd hope to be alive to see it, but I think we have a long road ahead. But it comes down to money and power, because without that, we'll be price takers forever. Whether it's coffee, tea, the people that have the money to buy a lot of coffee and buy a lot of chocolate, a lot of tea, will tell you, I know it took you 4 months to produce this, but I don't think it's worth more than $1 a pound. And if you have no money, you'll have to accept that $1 a pound.
Bro, you are dropping gems. Sound is
Thank
good,
you.
right? Sound is good?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah.
Cool. So I think you're dropping gems, man. I have some, I think the idea of intrade or even intra producing country powerful. It's a concept that folks on the continent about, people kind of seem like the idea of a single African like played out. From what I'm hearing, the people like, yo, we have to live in reality. And I'm an artist at heart. I'm a creative at heart. I make beats. I'm reality. And randomly, we've built a business presenting those things in the form of products. And let me skip the do you think possible. What would it look like if it was where people were being paid? Let's skip the if, because up on the if, there's a strategy I got as a team, right? And it's an idea where you think about how doing ideally, and then you plan the step. And I think sometimes we get stuck with, instead of just dreaming about the fully as we can, and then once we have that pain, we can start to plan. So let's look at coffee for. You think a world where, let's assume it's possible, what's happening? Like what's happening when farmers can set the price? What are the life change? How is that integrating with the arts world look like? And I know it's an audacious. We got to start thinking about those things if we want to be. Say this, shout out to Ramal. If there is no provision, without vision, we don't have the vision first, we won't be able to provide there. What do you think it could look like?
That's a great question. I don't want to pretend that I have the perfect solution, the perfect vision, but I think it starts with, you got to have that vision, got to have that narrative, got to have storytellers. Somebody earlier, a few comments around artists, and you're right. We need artists to basically use their voices and their creativity to share the message, right? So it can't just be entrepreneurs. It also has to be artists and communicators, whether it's songs, movies, documentaries, films, theater, like all this thing, basically, like as if we're able to control the story and tell new stories about the world we want to see. Like those stories are important, but if when you turn on the TV or listen to music, there's nothing that tells you about your history, that tells you about what a good future can look like. You won't be able to dream. So we need the dreamers and the artists to really kind of illustrate that for us in music, in films, in plays, in theater, plays in theater, and animation, and graphic design. So I think we definitely need the artists to accompany the entrepreneurs and the governments too, because at the end of the day, even though I'm an entrepreneur and I believe business can solve a lot of problems, I'm also very aware that after a while you also need a competent government, right? So we need to have governments involved and to support the artists, support the entrepreneurs, because if it's just one pillar doing all the work, it's not going to work, right? We can't just have the artists putting that beautiful vision out with no money behind it. We can't have the government putting all these statements out with no creativity and business behind it. So it all has to work together. It's really about government leaders, artists, entrepreneurs coming together to really put it all together. Yeah, because it's everybody has to play their role. I think that's my key takeaway. Everybody has to play their role, and in that role, in that ideal world, in that future world, not ideal, but that future world, it's gonna happen. Maybe in a generation or so. Basically, Black and brown people are no longer at the bottom of the global food chain. Because right now, it's sad, but it's the reality. Globally, Africans, Black and brown people really don't necessarily dictate their future. Like they can't necessarily, they don't control like their own countries. A lot right now today, most African countries, they answer to somebody else. That's the reality. And because again, it comes down to money. So I think as long as we have leaders and we have artists and we have money, we'll be able to solve it. But we'll have to do it together. It can't be silos. But in that perfect world, though, we won't be at the bottom of the food chain anymore, and we won't have to answer to anybody. We'll be an equal player. We'll be respected globally. And if we say no, it's no. If we say yes, it's yes. But right now, if we say no, they can turn that into a yes against our will, and that's because again we have no power, no unity, and no money. Yeah.
I think that brings up two or three things, and I think e-commerce is going to have to play a huge role. Talking about the blockchain, I don't want to get too deep in that because some of the stuff can be like pie. I think e-commerce and the ability to monetize is going to be in that future world a huge how Black and brown communities are using coffee as a means to be able to build culture. I think the ability to start creating it, and it also gives you, and I'm putting it on ability not just to focus on physical products as well, so to be able to monetize influence. You can monetize You can do all these things online, all kind of centered around the product, your particular brand of coffee. That's what our brand. I think the infrastructure to get there, we do have stable internet connections and having to go through super expensive DHL options. Then I can see so many youth, so many creating. I mean, because that's the one thing that I love about our youth are so creative. Like they make the culture dances, the sounds, the fashion trends. That if they were able to take that and add a physical product to our history, whether good or bad, into that creative, need the ability to share that with the world. Because once you're not competing with like DOs are just big and slow. So even if you're looking at these races in coffee, they can't be as like our advantage in the marketplace is our creativity to pivot. And so e-commerce gives you all these super complicated supply chains. You can directly to the consumer instead of having to find giant corporations. So I could see kids doing musical collaborations with kids in between, coffees in their various, working with an Ethiopian artist to do the graphic design. That's like, science fiction, all these things happening in coffee as a product that's like brandies as they share culture between each other. And if it does exist, then where e-commerce they can easily share, be so beautiful, man.
And just one more thing to add to that. The reason why the idea you bring up is brilliant, and the reason why I brought up government is kind of tied to that. Because even if we have the perfect business model, the perfect story, if it's not impossible, but if it costs a lot of money to ship locally because there are no good roads or because the taxes, there's trade and like there's trade barriers, it's not going to work. So we need government leaders that understand that and that basically make it easy to trade amongst us and actually build roads. Like right now, it's a lot of African countries don't have roads that, like, for example, you can't go from north. You probably could, but it'll take a long time. But from like South Africa to Egypt, like from Cairo to let's say Johannesburg, the extreme north and south, like I'm pretty sure it's not possible by road. And if it is, it'll be a lot of detours. It's not really feasible. Whereas if for example we had leaders that thought about connecting like roads and rail and removing sometimes where there's taxes or duties so that it's easy to trade, like this will be a game changer. So I think that's why the government plays in, because the artist entrepreneurs can't solve everything. There's some infrastructure that if government addresses, it will be a game changer. So they have to make it easy to trade amongst each other, because right now a lot of times it's actually easier for Congo to trade with Belgium than to trade with Kenya. Or so
wow.
Because there's trade
Say
barriers, right? So
again.
So a lot of times it's like there's actually more commerce between Africa and Europe than within Africa. Like intra-African trade is low, but if the opposite was true, Africa would probably be developed by now. But again, when you think about the trade barriers and the incentives and things like that, it makes sense for some people to make it hard for Africans to trade amongst each other, because if we did, we probably wouldn't need a lot of the rest of the world. So there's a lot of incentives to make sure that it's hard. But again, there's the African free trade area. Again, I hope it works out, that the leaders are able to make it work, because if they do, we can have real free trade amongst Africa. That'll be a big game changer. But right now, again, it's easier to sell to Europe and America than it is to sell to from Congo to, let's say, Ivory Coast. Like it's much easier to sell to Europe than to sell to France and to sell Ivory Coast, which makes no sense. But again, if you leaders know about that, they know about it. But if they actually have a solution to fix it, I think that's half of the problem. Yeah.
And I think here's where I think African Americans to this is because we do have access to the U.S. dollar. It's with American politics, and if we were able to say, hey, there is an international demand for intra-African products.
Yeah,
I think on a small level, like that's why I spoke to you earlier, dreaming of for next November for multiple group thing, and I think part of the thing, if we're able to time, is to bring a group of people from, melanated that can say we want to collaborate with, buy things from Black African business for our own. I think it's just sometimes it's person versus hearing these concepts kind of thrown around. I think that there's just a huge potential, even in small, present the model as something that could be viable in the market. So what we said earlier, things like Black Panther, these ideas are generating. It's showing the marketplace to see these kinds of products. Right now, they're mostly imagined, but if we take some of those products and actualize them, the all Black supply chain for Gucci Mane, part of that concept, because we know every supply chain is never going to be any type of one community. That's the point of globalism. But twice in a couple products creates the inspiration at more points along the supply chain, and it shows from diverse communities to purchase and collaborate. Right now, that's almost impossible for most points along. And I think that us presenting these ideas is important, and I think the more that we collaborate and see these things begin to be possible, and the skills are there, the resources are there, the imagination to be bold, to inspire us to provide the infrastructure for sustainable change. So yeah, man, I'm just grateful for your time. It was a piece. This is like a little bonus part. Yeah, man. Asked me about West African coffee before we left. You were talking about Sierra Leone. Those of us on James Hoffman's page, and we're big for stuff. Hoffman did the video on a particular peninsula that's in Sierra Leone. It's some friends to the channel. Steven Zinnerman talks about how it's literally a cherry is black. He's working on a paper. I think that represents the potential that is new coffee and for innovation in coffee. Coffee, what's the scene like? Even what's the potential for coffee? Are you aware of anything? Any farmers who are coming to, if people are interested in collaborating with them?
You're talking about the Sierra Leonean coffee?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have a friend at Mighty Peace. His name is Abdul. He's from Sierra Leone, and Sierra Leone actually has a similar history to Congo in terms of it's also very minerally rich. So they've had conflict in the past. It's peace now, but they had a conflict in the past tied around the minerals. But they also have great coffee, including what you were just talking about. And Abdul, he came from Sierra. He traveled to Sierra Leone, I want to say earlier this year, but he's back now. He lives in the Bronx, and I'm in Uptown New York, so I'm not too far for him. So I'll gladly connect you and share his information. But yeah, he was basically inspired by what we did with Mighty Peace Coffee, trying to put an unknown, not very well known origin on the coffee map, trying to basically do that same model for Sierra Leone. So he's very early, but he does have samples of that coffee. So I'll definitely connect you all and he can share that with you. Yeah, but he basically our model for Congo. I have not tasted it yet. I don't want to lie. I haven't tasted it yet. But I'm looking to you all.
I'm excited, bro. So we're gonna be in New York, October at Manhattan College. I guess this is the announcement. The next stop on our documentary tour. I'd love to invite him, to invite you who's watching this to come out and watch it with us. There's going to be so many opportunities for conversation time. I think Coffee Fest will be in New York, and so we would love to talk more, to see you all there in person, October 8th and 9th. The link below, and see our Coffee Black to Africa screenings and grab you a ticket. This is going to be phenomenal, man, and I think the opportunity, stations, and being a part of these in the future are going to be.
Absolutely, man. I'll be there. I can't wait.
You already know, bro. You got to bring the samples. This was fire. Somebody said this is a whole course. Go and check out Mighty Peace Coffee.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Go check out the doing amazing work. We're going to be getting some coffee from as well as doing a collaboration with one of those coffees. So I gotta say before we go, bro, it's possibly the most unique coffee I've ever tried in my life. Especially when we remove crazy varietals, not these, or we remove like crazy ferment. Like if we're talking about the actual coffee, no sugar. I had a coffee from the Great Lakes that it was roasted by Cameron Heath at Counter Coffee Collaboration, and that thing tasted like it tasted like grape soda, and I don't know, it was somewhere in Congo, and that thing, it was a wash, and it tasted like soda. What's don't even make a grape soda, but if they did, that's what it is about this coffee to this day. I like that's the so if you haven't, encourage you to, because that they have some coffees out there that are just mind blowing.
I agree with you. I'm glad you loved it.
What was the do you know of is the Great Congo that produces I can't remember where it was. It was so flavor, and I remember it was from Congo.
So can you repeat that? I just what I remember is from Congo. What did you say before that?
I remember it's from Congo, but I don't remember where in Congo it was. Do you have any suggestions on where that coffee was
from? Definitely, it said counterculture. I know and frankly, we've had coffees described like that, so it could definitely be anywhere from North and South Kivu, and and I'll talk with Linda afterward and basically share some of those flavor notes you shared to see, if she can pinpoint a certain area, but those basically super sweet and notes. Like a lot of the different co-ops we work with have coffees like that. We want to bring more. Each year we want to basically work with one more cooperative, so more Congolese coffee. So more of them have the opportunity to have their coffee in the international market. So we definitely have multiple coffees in Congo that have those notes. And I'll send you actually a couple of the samples of what we have, so you can see for yourself. Yeah, but we have that. Yeah, it's
bro.
Telling you, man, Congo's the best kept secret in coffee, and I hope to change that.
Bro, people are sleeping on it, and I think that people are missing anything special. So yeah, looking forward to talking with you soon. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the week. Appreciate you, my guy.
Appreciate you too, man. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks everyone for the comments and questions. Really appreciate you tuning in and asking questions.
Of course, bro. And Lake Kivu. I had to look online, but it was less of the varietal was like Malungu and mixed bourbon, 1,500 to 200 meters above sea level, and it was a wash. It was a natural grape soda, bro. So anyway, shout out to Congo, Jim. Shout out to everybody who's watching, and we look forward to that. We out.
Sounds good. Peace.